China is making moves that could upend the global food system as we know it. And this episode of Dominomics looks at what that means for major exporters like Brazil, Argentina, and the US. You see, over the last 20 years, China has relied heavily on imports for certain key food supplies. In 2024, it imported roughly $124 billion more in agricultural goods than it exported. But Beijing wants to change that. The climate shocks and geopolitical tensions of recent years have convinced the country's leadership to designate food independence a matter of national security. This is about more than planting a few more soybeans, but we'll come back to that. You see, before the 1980s, China was poor, but largely self-sufficient, with diets built around rice and other plant-based staples. Then economic growth exploded and the population grew by 450 million people. New money brought new appetites. Per capita food consumption rose by over 55%, and animal-based protein consumption increased tenfold. Today, China's become the world's largest meat producer, but the problem? It doesn't have the land or water to keep up with domestic demand, so it relies heavily on imported feed. That's made China the world's biggest soybean importer and a major buyer of beef, which has been great news for exporters like the US, Brazil, and Argentina. But now it's trying to rebuild its food system from within, using the same playbook that made China a global leader in electric vehicles and solar.
The mechanism of these transformations is identical. So we say they set targets, they cascade them through the 5-year plans, they provide concessional finance, they change the regulatory frameworks to enable the faster development of new technologies, and they create basically a kind of entrepreneurial sector that competes with itself.
So what happens when China takes the same approach with food? One example, China's going after soy imports directly, changing how livestock is fed and developing alternative proteins to reduce meat demand. Analysts say it could turn China from one of the world's biggest food buyers into a competitor to the countries that currently feed it. Estimates show that the expected efficiency gains alone could erase up to a quarter of soy demand by 2030. That's equivalent to nearly all US soybeans exported to China in 2024. By 2040, China could become a net exporter of poultry and other animal products. And by 2050, cultivated meat could supply as much as half of China's animal protein demand and position it as a food tech leader, just like EVs and solar. This is obviously a problem for the export nations that have built entire sectors around feeding China. There's no other market to replace the scale of Chinese demand. That means pressure on export prices as well as volume. That is, if China can pull it off.
It's kind of a techno-economic story. The consumption side of food is very different to the consumption side of energy. And so that is going to be a factor, and whether the Chinese government really tries to kind of, in a big way, intervene in terms of what its consumers are buying is still a question mark.
Well, what do you think? Will the EV playbook work on food?